1 o'clock and we have a quorum, which is fantastic. Thank you everyone for coming today. I know it's the first day of summer, I was just reminded, so.
It's too hot probably to be anywhere.
We are truly blessed here that we don't have 100-degree temperatures. For sure. So welcome everybody. I'll read the ethics statement. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in a particular matter involved. I think we have any. Fantastic. Do we have any public comment? Next we have approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Does everyone have time to review the agenda? So I'll entertain a motion. So Larry Harris first, Kevin Inslee second. I'll move quick, so roll call. Sorry.
Okay, Black Mountain, Archie Fertiller.
Here.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Here.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Here.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Here.
Fletcher, Jim Clare.
Here.
Haywood County, Kevin Inslee.
Here.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Here.
Laurel Park, George Banta.
Here.
Madison County, Matt Wetzel.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Mike Evelyn.
Here.
Mills River, Shannon Gaunt.
Here.
Montrese, Tom Whitmer.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Yeah, I got it.
Monroney, City of Asheville, here.
Oh, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kim. It looks like we got a packed agenda today, so I'll turn it over to Tristan for the amendments to the 2024-2035 Transportation Improvement Program.
Okay, so we just have a few mostly modifications today. In your agenda packet are a number of projects in the Transportation Improvement Program. Just a quick summary of some of the changes. One of them we are renaming. That is the North Brad Greenway. That is a project that is funded through the MPO's locally administered project, as well as NCDOT's Transportation Alternatives Program. We got a request from the City of Asheville to change the name of that project from the North Brad Greenway to the Wilma Dykeman Greenway Extension. So that is a modification, no funding or other scope changes. Also in the TIP, we are officially programming the 5310 and the Job Access Reverse Commute project that went through this board last month. Just as a reminder, those are transit projects that the MPO holds calls for projects. We go through and select projects to receive federal funds. As part of that process, we have to program those projects in the TIP in order for those to be able to be obligated. So we're going through that. Also is in the packet is the Liberty Road interchange. Some of the construction dates are being moved back, as well as adding additional funding to the project. And finally there's actually two additional things. One is the Wrightsville Road Sidewalk Project. That is one that is funded through the NPO's locally administered projects, as well as DOT's High Impact Low Cost and Resurfacing program. I will just do a quick aside on this. This is, I think, one of the very neat projects that we have. And CDOT is going through and resurfacing that area of Wrightsville Road. We know that, with the DA right there especially, there have been concerns about pedestrian safety. And so DOT applied to the MPO to get additional funds so that they can resurface as well as add sidewalks and new pedestrian accommodations. However, like a lot of projects, that's seeing a cost increase. And so NCDOT has asked that we shift projects from another locally administered project that was on Charlotte Street in Nashville. They were actually able to complete that project without using the MPO's funds. So they've asked that we move funds from that project over to the Wrightsville Road project. And so that accounts for the cost increase that is in your packet. And finally is one we sent out yesterday, that's project U5616. That is the MPO's planning supplement. I don't want to get into the weeds on that unless you really want me to. But that is essentially, this is our project that funds a lot of the MPO's special studies. And so in your consent agenda, we moved a number of studies from FY24 over to FY25. That includes the Buncombe County Pedestrian Plan, the Woodson Weaverville Greenway study, and the MPO's staffing and compensation study. There's deadlines with the fiscal year coming up that we either don't think will be met or it's just safer for us to move it to FY25 to avoid potential delays. So in moving those studies, we have to increase the amount of funding in FY25, but it does not change cost share or anything like that. It's just basically making sure the money's where it needs to be. But those are the TIP amendments and modifications we have for you all today. And we are looking for board approval. The PCC recommendation was to approve the TIP amendment as presented.
Any questions, comments? Anyone want to get into the weeds?
Always happy to go into the weeds.
Good. No broader questions today. Okay. With that being said, I'll entertain any motions. So moved. Thank you, ladies. We'll look for a second. No. Yep.
Okay. Asheville, Kim Ronnie.
Aye.
Black Mountain, Archie Priscilla.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Slayer.
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Inslee.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Fanta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wetzel.
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Mike Evelyn.
Aye.
Mills River, Shannon Gaunt.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Windber.
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, oh, no, sorry, the iPad.
Thank you. Fantastic. Next, we'll continue business with P7 Draft Local Impact Assessment for Regional Impact Projects. And this is very interesting. Includes some very good things.
We'll try to keep this. This is one where I will just say anything folks want us to dive into a little bit more or simplify or anything. We can dive in a bit more, but I'll try to keep it relatively brief and to the point. Relatively is the key word.
And just so you know, the prioritization subcommittee, I think we've spent an hour now.
Yeah.
Discussing this.
So, P7 regional impacts, just a little bit of background and reminder from our orientation. SPOT, P7, the prioritization process, that is the key point in the transportation planning process that essentially helps us determine what are the projects in our long-range plan that should be moving forward to be funded. So the key question that's being asked as part of this process is what transportation projects should be funded next. That's really what the prioritization process is there to serve. Overall, this is my kind of hopefully simple way of keeping track of where we are in the process. The first step in prioritization is submitting projects. So what are the projects that we want to have considered in a round of prioritization? As you all may remember, we sat down this time with elected officials and staff across the entire region, county by county, to have meetings about what are the key priorities people want considered in this round. That was done last fall and went through the TCC and board, and we had public comment periods on that. Following that, NCDOT goes through and provides quantitative scores. So they look at the amount of congestion. They look at safety concerns and potential safety benefits from the proposed treatment, the potential for economic development, the cost benefit. There's a number of things that are looked at that go into what is a quantitative score for all of those different measures. It's essentially saying how high is the need based on the data, or how low is the need. From there, they program statewide mobility projects. We'll get a bit more into that. And then we're at the point of the process where we are right now, which is local input points assignment for regional impact projects. So the regional impact tier is one of the funding tiers, and part of determining what are the priorities in that tier is assigning local input points from the NPO or NCDOT divisions. But there's many more steps to go as we develop this tip and step. So this won't be the last time that we discuss this. To get into a little bit on how SDI works, because I do think it's important to understand, the SDI prioritization is governed by the Strategic Transportation Investments Act of 2012. And that essentially lays out 3 different funding tiers. Basically says that certain types of projects will compete in certain types of funding tiers, and funding will be distributed based on what's in the law. A little bit on each of the funding tiers, and you should have a chart in your agenda packet that spells out eligible projects and how funding is determined. The tier that gets the largest amount of funding is the statewide mobility tier. They get 40% of transportation improvement funds. Projects are selected solely based on the quantitative score. There's no local input. The eligible projects for us are interstate strategic highways, so US 2374 in Haywood County is a strategic highway that competes, as well as the Asheville Airport. To note, in P7, there's roughly $1 billion available for projects. That sounds like a lot. $1 billion is a lot to a guy like me. But in terms of transportation across the state, that's a fairly limited amount of funding. Our region did not receive any new statewide mobility projects this round. And my kind of op-ed is that's disappointing, but not a huge surprise. Something I've heard from peers across the state is that we didn't have as many statewide projects cut over the last few years as some other parts. But nonetheless, still somewhat disappointing, and hopefully moving forward we can get a project in the next round or so. Moving on is the regional impact tier. That receives 30% of the funds, and funding is split to 7 different regions around the state based on those regions' populations. So our region is Region G. It is the second smallest region based on population, so it receives the second smallest allotment of funding. That encompasses the counties that are part of Divisions 13 and 14 of NCDOT, and the eligible projects are any project on the US highway, an MC highway, or anything that wasn't funded in statewide mobility that we'd like to have considered in the regional impact here. And to note, the quantitative score plays a large part in determining what gets programmed, but local input points start to play a role in that as well. And finally, I won't get too in the weeds on this, division needs. That's a tier that we'll talk about in the fall. Funding is distributed by division. and that accounts for projects on our secondary roads. So I know I've gotten a lot of questions about Standing Bridge Road, and some other questions, of some of our other projects on secondary roads. You don't see those on the packet today because we'll be talking about those in the fall, just to be clear. Again, the key funding tier that we're talking about today is the regional impact tier. And so just to kind of highlight how projects are generally programmed in the regional impact tier, projects score anywhere from 0 to 100. Up to 70 points of that score is the quantitative score developed by NCDOT, and then up to 15 comes from the MPO, and another 15 can come from an NCDOT division. So just to highlight how this works, let's say we have a project that scores a 50 in its quantitative score. The MPO can elect to put points on a project. We have 1,900 points. And so the confusing math here is if we put 100 points on the project, it translates to 15. 100 equals 15. I don't know how else to do it. Yeah, that's the fancy math. So if the MPO elects to put points on a project, that essentially boosts the project score by 15 points. And if the DOT division does that as well, it gets another boost of 15 points. So our project that scored a 50 can score an 80 after we add local input points, and makes it more likely to be funded. If we really don't like that project, and if our local governments have concern about that project moving forward, we don't have to put points on it, which would lower the score to 65 and make it less likely to be funded. Overall, I think it's very, very unlikely for projects to be funded in any round unless the MPO and the division put points on the project. However, well, and to note, just, the whole idea of this is if we want projects to get funded, we want them to get the highest score possible. And so we want our regional priorities to get the biggest bump that they can. Now, to note the caveat that we brought to all of these meetings is we also received updated funding projections from NCDOT. So in your packet and on the screen, that shows the updated funding projections for each of the funding pots as part of prioritization. And for our region, we are looking at negative $191 million available through 2035. And so, to be clear, for folks who have been around a while, normally at this stage, we talk a lot about, what are the probabilities of projects being funded? And, if we put points here and don't put them here, then we can really get some projects going. With a negative $191 million balance, I have none of that input to share. So maybe a shorter presentation. But there has been some discussion at the state level about whether or not we should be proceeding with this round of prioritization it's not just us that has negative balances. I think the ultimate decision was that, even with negative balances, we haven't gone through a full round of prioritization in 6 years. Knowing what the priorities are is of utility. And also of note is that there have been rounds of prioritization where we've finished the round, and there have been some projects that just missed the cut, and when additional funding was made available, DOT went back and funded projects that we previously thought wouldn't be funded. So just to note, of any off chance of that happening, it's better to have an updated list. But regardless, just to be clear, really what we're talking about today is projects that we see as priorities that we want to put points on, but their chances of being funded are essentially zero. To note, with negative funding balances, something that we've heard from SCDOT is that uncommitted projects are likely to be removed from the STIP. So for us, that includes US 19 Soka Road project in Maggie Valley. That's a project that's in the STIP. It's been looked at, but given the negative balances, rather than keeping it in the outer years, it's very, very likely to be just fully removed from the STIP. There's also US 2570, which stretches between Buncombe County and Weaverville out to Madison County. And so those would be projects that are likely to be removed. They've also noted that with negative balances, changes to project schedules are likely. With the cost increases that are coming in, a lot of the projects, we are likely to see their schedules move back, is what we've been told. One thing that I will just say I wish I had more information on, but I don't. I think that's still being determined at the state, is potentially revisiting the committed status of projects. That's something that I don't think anyone wants to do, but given very large negative balances, that is something that may be considered. And to note, we know that there is one project in Region G getting an updated cost estimate that is, I think, at least a couple of times higher than what's currently in the STIP. So, all in all, we're waiting on additional information about these items with negative funding balance. But in the meantime, going back to this round of prioritization and how we determine priorities, the MPO has a methodology on what projects we prioritize for local input points. One of our former board members, when we were showing spot scores and MPO scores, after the meeting said, I need a meeting where we don't talk about points for just 1 month. Sorry, folks. But just really quickly, our methodology is based on the goals in our MCP. So we look at things like safety, congestion, the local priorities that we discussed with, I think, virtually everyone here. We held county by county meetings to talk about priorities. We look at non-motorized transportation options. So how many, or what's the bike ped crash risk, and what are the treatments being proposed as part of those projects? We look at freight. We look at where things are in the planning process, environmental impacts, and resiliency. So looking at things like landslide risk, flood risk, and some of the wildlife crossings that have been identified. So we look at that. We score projects based on all of those things, and we kind of work our way down that list to determine what our priorities will be. So also to note, we did hold a public survey to get the public input on all of these projects that have been proposed. We held that from April 1st to May 20th. We got more than 1,700 responses, and we did ask for people's zip codes, so hopefully you can see the map that shows the distribution of where we got responses from. Transylvania County led the way with 655 responses. Buncombe County not far behind with 593, followed by Henderson County with 415, Madison County with 60, and Haywood County with 53. I just want to note that I do really appreciate our local governments that help promote this. We really notice when you all send things out. When there's a newsletter, when there's a Facebook post, we tend to see a jump in responses. But just a high-level summary, there is a very long report that is linked in your agenda packet. But what we heard from the public, the most positively received projects included number one, the Western North Carolina Passenger Rail Project. That received the most favorable to unfavorable responses from the public. Section C of the I-26 connector, that's the I-40-240-26 interchange. And number three was the Richland Creek Greenway in Waynesville. Those had, again, the highest positive to negative response ratios. The least positively received is the widening of I-40 from Monte Vista Road to Wiggins. So essentially from I-26 going west to East Canton exit. The Howard Gap Road at Tracy Grove Road, intersection improvements, and the Peachtree Road extension, which is a little road that almost connects Hendersonville Road to Sweeten Creek Road. That's a project that would hopefully provide that connection because you've got a 2-mile gap where there's no connection between those two roads. Not something that people are banging down the doors to get done, I guess. But all in all, I'll note that even with the least positively received projects, those were either just barely more negative responses or close to like 50-50. So all in all, I'm not sure what's in the water. Last time we did this survey, we got a whole bunch of projects that everyone hated. And this time, people are feeling good, I guess. Lots of positive responses overall. But again, if you feel like diving more into all of the responses, we do have that survey on our website and the links available in your packet. So with the survey responses and how we prioritize projects, our general process is that we would assign 3 highway projects points and 1 non-highway project point if there's no funding. Our prioritization subcommittee and the TCC recommended that we change that a little bit to make sure we get some good geographic spread. The recommendation before the board is to assign local input points or draft local input points to 5 different highway projects as well as 1 non-highway project. So to go through those, the first one is our highest scoring one based on our methodology and the 3rd highest in Region G. That is the Smoky Park Highway, US 1923, that goes from I-40 over to NC 151 in Asheville and Buncombe County. About 7% of the traffic on that road is trucks. Based on the spot score, it's already over capacity. 824 crashes, 12 severe and fatal crashes in the last 5 years. And that proposed improvement includes a 10-foot multi-use path and 5-foot sidewalk. Overall cost is looking at a little over $85 million. And the public survey score had 41% positive, 21% negative responses. That's the number 1 priority based on scores. Number 2 would be Hendersonville Road, going from NC 146 or Long Shoals down to Airport Road in Buncombe County in Asheville. That has volumes of 30,000. 4.65% of that volume is trucks. Also, a roadway that is over capacity, 505 crashes, 3 severe and fatal crashes in the 5-year period that was looked at. Same cross-section, cost of $132,200,000, and 54% positive responses, 18% negative. And my apologies, I should have noted with both of these projects, what's being proposed is access management. So in general, that project is adding a median through the corridor. Medians are nothing you will ever hear people demanding. But it's something that's a proven safety countermeasure that's been shown to reduce severe and fatal crashes especially, but also crashes overall. So adding a median, addressing some congestion at some of the intersections, and adding complete streets improvements is generally what's being recommended and being evaluated. And then another access management project in Henderson County and Hendersonville, that is the Spartanburg Highway. volumes of 21,500, over 6% of which are trucks. The volume to capacity is not over, but it's certainly getting up there, over 80% capacity. 379 crashes, 5 severe and fatal. Estimated cost at over $121 million, and public survey 39% positive, responses 31% negative. That is priority number 3. Priority number 4, that is in Haywood County. That is the 1923 Asheville Highway and Park Street project. That's a project that would connect to a already funded project on 1923 going further to the east. The volumes are just under 10,000. The truck percentage is significant, basically 8.5%. Again, over 80, almost 90% capacity. 96 crashes over a 5-year period, 0 severe and fatal. Cost of over $40 million, and a public survey score of 47% positive responses, 23% negative. But we know this is one of Canton and Haywood County's big priorities, especially providing a potential greenway connection out to the Chestnut Mountain Park, which has been a hit. I will note almost too much of a hit for when we go out there, but helping to alleviate traffic and provide options between downtown Canton and their new park. In Madison County, NC 213, that would be an access management project to do a 2-lane divided highway with a 10-foot multi-use path and 5-foot sidewalk. Volumes are over 5,000, trucks 5%. Volume to capacity is just at 30%, but to note, we know this is an area that's ripe, that is seeing development and is ripe for more development. There's a water and sewer extension project that is getting underway right now, I believe. So this is an area where we anticipate more development, and to note, on this stretch, 76 crashes over the 5-year period, but 6 of those severe and fatal. And so having that median helping to improve safety, especially as more development comes in, is something we see as key. Price tag, $130 million. Stefan, I think we need to make a note to dig into that a little bit. Yeah. I don't want to say any cost estimates inside these days, but that one might be one.
Bear in mind, that's probably a cost estimation tool, and it's right. It's just applying a template, and it's very. If an express design is like an airplane level look at something, cost estimation tool is probably like satellite level.
Yeah, so that's something we might want to look at. Public survey score 45% positive, 33% negative. To note, its spot score is not the highest, but I think that's something we can work on looking at in terms of potential changes before next round. But those are the 5 highway projects that were prioritized based on the MPO scores in discussion with the TCC and prioritization subcommittee. The last project is the non-highway projects. This was really easy. We have one non-highway project that's eligible at this tier. That's the Western North Carolina Passenger Rail Project. We've talked about this a fair amount. This is essentially bringing passenger rail back to the Asheville to Salisbury line. It's been talked about, I think, basically since service stopped in 1975. As of right now, the feasibility study that was completed is looking at about $660 million to upgrade the rail, upgrade stations, buy some trains. So really what we're asking for in this process is a potential 20% local match, which would be $130 million. Again, this is the project that had the most positive response in our public survey, 79% positive responses, 11% negative. It was the 9th highest scoring project in Region G. So if there were funding, this would be one of the ones that would have a pretty decent shot. To note, one of the complicating factors, the MPO did not go all the way to Salisbury, thank God. About 15% of the project is within our MPO. So we would just be playing a part in making this a local priority. We would be relying on our other MPOs and NCDOT divisions. Yes,
And I think I'll point out there's another study still working on doing, there's another study doing further research on this project, right?
correct. So this project got into the Federal Rail Administration's Corridor ID program, which means it'll be moving forward with environmental documentation and service planning. And so my understanding is DOT's rail division is currently scoping for that to begin. And there's much more to that if we want to get into it. But this project is in the pipeline of projects to be considered for actually happening. There's still a lot of hurdles we have to get through, but this project being in the pipeline, this is the furthest along this has been, I think since 1975, yeah. So those are the 6 projects that's being recommended for local input points from the MPO. Just to note with next steps, however the board votes on draft local input points, we will put that out for public input over the summer. That'll come back through the TCC and the board in August for a final vote. And then we will move on to the division needs here in October and November. So this is what we are requesting today is a vote for draft points on these 6 projects that will come back for final assignment in August.
When you say you have negative comments, what are those?
You should read them.
Really?
You can read them online.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will note,
Do they not make sense, probably?
It's the same ones we always get sent.
I will say I think over half of the public survey report is open-ended comments that we received. But the way that we set up this survey is, we're asking people about over 70 projects in the region. We wanted to make it short and simple and to the point. And in general, we know that people tend to care about 1 or 2 projects, and that's all they want to say. So we set it up so people could give a 1 through 5, and a 1 being, I hate this project, and I hope it never happens, and a 5 being, I love this project. So when we say, 40% positive, we mean that people gave it a 4 or 5. If 20% negative, that means they gave it a 1 or a 2. And so, but beyond that, we also got a lot of open-ended comments. Some of them are very good comments, and some of them are, I would put them in the generally negative. A lot of questions about why projects are taking so long, a lot of comments on maintenance, and the need for greater roadway maintenance. I think were 2 of the big themes that kind of stuck out from negative comments.
And what about this project? Consider this project.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
So just to be clear, these projects, although there's no funding for them, they're there for priority should funding occur. The other projects that were on the list for local funding, those are pretty much not in any sense going to receive any attention until another reauthorization cycle.
Yeah, I mean.
Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a fair statement all around. I mean, really, as long as the funding situation is what it is, what this exercise is stating our region's priorities. And so if the funding situation changes, you know, maybe that's something they revisit and say, oh, Smoky Park Highway, Hendersonville Road, you know, now that there's funding and the MPO said it was a priority, it has somewhat of a better shot. But all in all, I mean, projects not getting points, 0% chance of being funded. These projects, not much of a better chance of being funded.
And there are a good many projects that are just getting 0 points.
Correct.
And we'd rather have a list in case there is something and then not, than have to scramble. Stranger things have happened, so hopefully they'll funding.
Well, I think the hope is that the legislature is going to appropriate more money just towards some of this stuff at some point. So, and I think we just want to be ready when it happens.
That's very diplomatic way of saying it. Any other questions, comments? That being said, we do need, there does need to be action, so we'll have to have a motion to approve the recommendations.
Motion approved.
Larry made a motion. Second? One second. Yeah, I'll get Shannon second. So, roll call.
I don't quickly write that down on this committee motion. Okay. Asheville Kimroni,
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady,
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet,
Aye.
Flat Rock, Ann Coletta,
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Player,
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Ensley,
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley,
Aye. Sorry.
Laurel Park, George Banta,
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wechsel,
Aye.
Maggie Valley, Mike Evelyn,
Aye.
Mills River, Shannon Gaunt,
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer,
Aye.
Urban Transit, Larry Harris,
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton,
Aye.
Woodson, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Just say rural transit is here that
Oh,
way.
I'm
No problem.
I
I came in.
I apologize.
No problem.
Yeah.
Rural Transit, David White.
Yes.
The ayes have it.
Fantastic.
I'll just, one more note, I didn't want to confuse our vote, but an item that'll be coming back in August, and 7 May split. One of the projects that's currently in the tip and stiff that has been funded for a number of years is the widening of future I-26. It's project A10AA. One of the things that we discussed with the division is the cost has escalated on that project, that I would say to somewhat of an extreme. And so one of the things that we talked about with the division is how can we make changes to the project scope in order to have something to keep it in the tip and stiff. In all honesty, the cost estimate that they provided to us was a different magnitude, I will say, several times how the project was initially programmed. So something that'll be coming back is a potential alteration to that future 26 project, and you know, just the general idea of trying to not have that negative 191 million get too much larger of a negative. So just a heads up, that will be coming back in August.
Thank you. So that concludes the business section. Next, we'll go to the informational. Natasha Earl Young with NCDOT Resource Plan.
So just a quick intro. Natasha Earl-Young is the policy director at NCDOT. Natasha has worked on a number of initiatives at NCDOT, and just to note, all of them have been fantastic products. And one of the things we know that our region and across the state we're facing is an increase in resiliency consideration and issues. So Natasha was kind enough to join us today to talk about NCDOT's resiliency and their plan. So Natasha, are you can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Let me get the right thing up. All right, can you see the PowerPoint presentation okay?
We can.
Awesome. So good morning. Oh, no, sorry, good afternoon. I'm in a different time zone today. I'm actually on vacation, so excuse me in my timing. My name is Natasha Earl-Young, and I am the policy director at NCDOT, and I'll be giving you a presentation on our statewide resiliency improvement plan. So resiliency started at the federal level in 2012 with the MAP Act, encouraging DOTs and metropolitan planning organizations to consider resilience throughout their planning processes. In North Carolina, things kicked off with Governor Cooper's Executive Order 80 in 2018, which designated for all state entities to incorporate resilience from planning all the way through operations and maintenance. This was developed after Wilmington was cut off due to a hurricane, and there were no routes in and out of that metropolitan area. And then that's what birthed our NCDOT policy. And our policy is not specifically just about weather, but it's also making sure that we're incorporating all forms of resilience, which comes down to even traffic accidents and our roadways being open to those quickly after accidents occur. And then in 2021 is what brought about dedicated resilience funding to all states to be able to do resilience work. This funding was a part of IJA or BEAL, which is the FHWA Protect program. This funding is both formula funding that is allocated to each of the states through those formula dollars, but also through discretionary funding as well, which not only states can apply for those discretionary funds, but MPO areas and local areas as well. And then in 2022, Governor Cooper released an Executive Order 266 to make sure that all new state-owned buildings and properties aren't built within the floodplain. And if you're doing any major upgrades to particular buildings, that you may need to move that particular building. So as you're updating your own land use plans, I recommend that's something that you consider. So NCDOT's Resiliency Improvement Plan, the purpose behind it was to reach FHWA's new program that they developed in the Protect program, which allows you to have a reduction in match for funds. So typically, whenever you get funding from FHWA, you have a 20% match. With this new program, if you develop this resiliency improvement plan, you can reduce your match by 7% or an additional 3%. In order to reduce your match by 7% is literally developing the resiliency improvement plan and including a prioritization list of projects. And then the additional 3% is once you incorporate that resiliency improvement plan into your long range transportation plan. So you could essentially get your match down from 20% all the way down to 10% in funding. So FHWA listed out a series of different requirements for what is required to be in that plan in order for them to approve that plan. So it needs to be a systematic approach. It needs to be consistent with state and local hazard mitigation plans, risk-based assessment of assets, looking at your natural disasters and weather events and climate change, looking at the benefits of nature-based solutions and green infrastructure, looking at the long-term planning process, evacuation routes, your response to emergencies, and making sure that you include that investment plan and then use of science and data. So NCDOT did develop their resiliency improvement plan, and their plan was adopted by FHWA in April of this year. So the plan is not something that is going to stay on a shelf. It is a dynamic plan that requires us to do constant collaboration and communication, as well as monitoring and reviewing. We plan on updating our plan at least once or twice a year, based on the information and how things have changed, making sure that we don't have this plan that is just sitting on a shelf. So it takes a multitude of different entities and information to bring a plan like this together. It includes looking at what is already in the STIP, but also looking at what is in your long range transportation plan, or what is those projects that are in that holding tank that were in your previous plans but never made it to the STIP. Looking at other federal programs or plans that are required, such as the Transportation Asset Management Plan or the Freight Plan, but also taking in consideration for the vulnerability assessments that we've already developed in resiliency projects. So there are a number of different resiliency related initiatives and regulations that we've reviewed. We have different research projects that we've conducted, as well as vulnerability assessments. We will be having one in the fall that'll be starting on the I-40 in the western part of the state. We also have developed tools that will help us look out 48 hours in advance of a storm coming and how those assets could be affected, but also tools to help us forecast into the future routes that may be inundated based off of their current roadway elevation. And then there's a series of different reports that have been created at the state level as well, and then other projects that have included resiliency already. So some of the key components for the resiliency plan is developing a statewide criticality map. So that's basically how critical is that particular roadway. This doesn't just include roadway, but it also includes rail as well, identifying the vulnerabilities of the assets, and then also a score-based prioritization list, and looking at the exposure to hazards, the conditions of assets as well. So for the criticality map, you'll see here, there are several roads in the Asheville area that are considered high criticality. High criticality are those ones that are most critical. Low is the ones that are not as critical. The routes that we studied are interstates, future interstates, evacuation routes, NC routes, and US routes. The components that make up how critical a route is the usage and operations, which is truck traffic, and redundancy, which is the number of additional routes you have to get from the particular route that you're on. Social economic data, which is your tourism, jobs, transportation, disadvantage index, proximity to military and transportation hubs, health and safety, which are proximity to hospital shelters and utilities. For the vulnerability, we looked at also outside of the roadways, we looked at the bridges and culverts specifically, looking at coastal flooding, but also for riverine flooding, making sure that whenever your streams or rivers are overtopping, how that is affecting the roadway, looking at rock falls, landslides, sea level rise, and storm surge. For exposure, this is when we take a look at, based on what is the probability or the chance that a particular road will flood per year, and what is the depth that it will flood. And based on the depth is what ranks it low, medium, and high, but also looking at the road elevation of the roadway, and then also looking at the geotech asset management scoring. And so for some of the slopes that are in Western North Carolina, our geotech unit has done a rating of some of those slopes and are able to tell us what those, how those slopes ranked from good to bad. And so we've ranked those and included that assessment as well for exposure. We also looked at the sensitivity, which is information directly that is given to FHWA far as the condition of the roadway as well as our bridges and culverts. For our rail, it was kind of altered a little bit based off of what information that we're able to get from rail, as a lot of that information is proprietary data and information that can be provided. And so all of those things is what ends up developing what that final score is to let us know how critical and vulnerable a particular asset is, and then laying that information on top of our STIP list to understand what develops our prioritization list of projects. So this map here is what that prioritization score is of roadways, high being the most critical and vulnerable projects or section of roadway. And so you see you have several that is in your particular area that ranked in the high section. And then this is the final scoring of the bridges. And so there are a couple of bridges in that same location of Asheville as well. And then we have our culverts, a final map based on prioritization as well. And then for next steps. So next steps, as I mentioned, Geotech does do these ratings of these slopes and rock falls and landslides. Unfortunately, in the past, they didn't have dedicated funding to be able to do the ranking for all the areas that needed. But what that Protect funding did provide is us the funding to be able to go out and do that. And so they've already completed looking at 131 of the failure locations that have happened in Division 14. And in the fall, once the leaves fall off, they will be starting Division 13 and looking at those 100 locations in that area. And then we'll be modifying our plan to incorporate the rating information from it. So to give you an idea of some of the things that they look at when they go out and do these assessments, is they're looking at what is the length of detour, how long does it take for that detour to happen, what is the type of failure that's happening, how the trip is being disrupted in that area. Is looking at the amount of damage that's done to the pavement, the time for repair, the previous events that has happened, the amount of maintenance that is required to be done, and how much the repair is. So it's a different series of information, and it takes them quite a while to complete this for each site. And so you say, well, why is all that important? It all is important because of money. And so FHWA's discretionary grant for resiliency specific projects is coming out later in the later part of the summer of this year, according to their website. So it could change if their website changes. And so that fund is called Protect. That Protect grant, discretionary grant, is available for anyone to apply for. So you don't have to be the state to apply. It can be the MPO. It can be a local area that can apply for those funds. If you apply for a planning resiliency fund, it is 100% federal funds and doesn't require a match. But if you apply for the other funds to do construction, it does require a 20% match unless you have an approved RIP, which your project falls into that prioritization list, and then you're able to get that reduction that I talked about earlier, which is that additional reduction of 7%, because we have a developed RIP for this area. Also, as you are applying for other discretionary grants, one of the main things that they are grading grant applications off of is the completion of having climate resilience information into your grant application. And so this is information that you're able to use into those grant applications. Is information that we have used in our grant applications. And I will take any questions.
Any questions? Thank you so much, Natasha.
Thank you, Natasha. Natasha, I will probably be bugging you, hopefully not on your vacation, about Protect grant items. So heads up, but yeah, I mean, all in all, again, this is something that is playing a bigger and bigger role in transportation. How many times have we talked about landslides and flooding in the last few years? And the fact is that this is very complicated stuff. And so all the work that Natasha and her unit is doing to try to make sure that the state is addressing the highest priorities set policies in place that make this a regular part of planning, I think is absolutely fantastic. So Natasha, our door is open to you. Anytime you have information you want to share with our folks, and always happy to get your updates.
Yes, thank you so much, Tristan. And I'm actually playing double duty right now with FHWA and their Mid-Atlantic Resilience Roundtable. So they're having a discussion right now about the RIPS and MPOs, doing their RIPS, and some of the other areas are giving their advice. So hopefully I can be able to give you some of that information from some of the other MPOs in the Mid-Atlantic region next week.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is regular updates. Division 13.
Yep, this is Hannah. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sure can.
I'm gonna wait for the other Hannah to share the reports.
I got you. 1 second.
Okay.
A little bit slower. There we go.
Okay, great. So I will start with some construction updates. I'm going to touch mostly on our interstates because we've got a lot of work on our interstates right now. But if there's any questions about other projects, just let me know. Like to start with I-26, I-4700, and then the new interchange Pratt Whitney. They are, for the interchange, they're still working on the westbound alignment and off ramps. I've done quite a bit of work out there the past 4 or 5 months. As far as the mainline work, just a reminder, the goal is to have the eastbound traffic on the new eastbound alignment from Long Shoals to the south end of the project by the end of July. So that's quickly approaching. Look for press releases and subsequent traffic shifts around then. As far as the Blue Ridge Parkway Bridge, they've done obviously a decent amount of work outside of this, or they have a decent amount of work outside of the segmental work, as well as some roadway work that has to be done before we put traffic on it. And then obviously the demolition of the old bridge will be after we do a traffic shift, but we're probably anywhere from 2 to 4 months away from that still, is what I've heard. So stay tuned there. The other goal the contractor has as far as milestones is to have all traffic on the new westbound alignment, from just north of where the new interchange is going to the end of the northern end of the project, so Brevard Road, by the end of the summer or sometime in the fall. So big changes coming soon out there. Think you all are aware at this point about the work on I-40 for mile marker 45 to 50. I think we have probably 3 or 4 more weekend interstate closures coming this summer, and those are coming out the week of the closure, those press releases. So I know the MPO gets those, and they typically share with the board and the TCC as well. So just pay attention to those, particularly if you're going to be out on I-40 for those weekends. Wanted to touch on I-40 exit 53A, that's at US 74A. Contractor has finished all of the grading operations for the acceleration lane that we're adding. All the drainage structures are installed, and they are anticipating placing that first course of asphalt in the coming weeks, and then they'll continue with curb and gutter work after that. So they're moving right along out there. That's really it for what I wanted to touch on construction, unless there's any questions. Like I said, there's a lot of interstate work going on right now.
Any questions for Hannah?
As far as project development, I'll just mention a lot of these dates you all have been seeing for about a year now. Anything that says not funded for right of way and construction, those are projects that were previously funded in the STIP. Some point over the past 2 or 3 years became unfunded and are reworking their way back through the prioritization process. As Tristan, indicated with his presentation earlier, we didn't get any statewide projects. We're probably not going to get any regional or division needs either. So these are likely to become P8 projects. And then I wanted to touch on a couple that are a little bit closer in the program. Liberty Road interchange. You had a delayed construction date in the agenda today for approval, but we are still actively in right-of-way and acquisition, and we're about 45% complete with that. And then utility relocation will follow. The other interchange project in Buncombe County at Blue Ridge Road and Black Mountain, it's my understanding we're about to go to right-of-way in August of this year. The let date, though, is going to be pushed about 6 to 8 months, and that's due to a bat moratorium that we're going to have to work around, and also a small redesign to the roadway plans that is due to some new construction in the project area. I believe it's residential new homes. So anyways, look for that in a upcoming agenda for approval as well. But other than that, I think a lot of these are the same that they've been for a little while now. Any questions?
Let's go. And that moratorium? Yeah.
Yes, I'm not the person to ask about the specifics, but basically we have to work around. I think also in our region we have trout moratoriums, and those are the two that show up in our contracts where we basically have to delay entry into our rivers, and then bats are, I suppose, on our bridges, and it affects tree clearing, which can affect utility relocation. So we just basically have to account for these things in our schedule to not delay the contractor.
Perfect. Thank you. That was rhetorical from me, I think. But thank you so much, Pam. Any questions for him? Nope. Next, Division 14.
Hey, everybody, this is Steve. Can you hear me okay? All right. So construction projects, same thing that you've been seeing for a while in Haywood County, be finishing up the resurfacing there near Canton. The bridges, there's a group of 5 bridges up around Jonathan Creek, so further west. The current one there at Jonathan Creek, where US 276 comes out, I don't think that it's 2 lanes in each direction. I know that last week it was still 1 lane in each direction, but they are anticipating opening the bridges to 2 lanes in each direction this month. The bridge at where 19 splits off on 2374 and the Richland Creek Bridge, which is also right there at that interchange, that project has started, as well as the Russ Avenue project. And mainly you see barriers, traffic control, and erosion control measures being put in place. That Walnut Street, Main Street project is complete. And the sidewalk there in Maggie Valley, or the pedestrian project that had median refuges and pedestrian signals, that one's complete as well. The I-26 project, same thing that's been going on in Henderson County for a while as far as completing the concrete pavement surface, and then shifting traffic as necessary. And they are nearing completion of most of those pavement structures. Henderson County, the Green River Bridge replacement on I-26, bridge over Green River, that completion date did move out 14 months, which we had anticipated that. And let's see, 1 project was added there at the very bottom, just so that you're aware of the curb ramps being brought up to ADA standards, and that's South Main Street to 9th Avenue. Any questions on those before we go to project development?
I would just like to thank you for the new tourist attraction in Waynesville 2 days in a row. Old Faithful with the geysers, but thank you.
You're welcome. I don't think that was actually us, but it was a contractor.
That was the contractors, yeah.
That was quite a fiasco from what I understand. Always glad to entertain.
My phone wasn't ringing on that, so thank you.
So on the project development side of things, kind of same thing that Hannah said. It's the projects you've been seeing for a while. Call attention to the fourth line there. That's B-6054D, and the next line down is B-6054E. Those let dates have obviously passed. That's part of that group of bridges I was talking about out there on I-40. They have actually led, and it's a little odd there because they're all those bridges were awarded to one contractor, and we go into the next phase by supplemental agreement. Those have been put in place, and when the current bridge is completed, then you'll see construction on these next two start. There's also the bridge over Beaver Dam on I-40. That contract has been awarded now. Last week it had gone to bid, but the contract hadn't been awarded. But and I think that you saw that in the media release as well. Also down towards kind of towards the bottom there, I added a project that starts with RX, and that's just a railway grade crossing at Signal and Gates on NC 215 at Blue Ridge Southern Railroad crossing there in Canton or near Canton. And the very last line on Haywood County also added that one. That's just an installation of a pedestrian signal and crosswalk at Carolina Boulevard and Mulberry Street there in Clyde. Henderson County, let's see, just a couple of things. About 5 down, you see the number is BP 14-T015. Just wanted to call your attention to that because it's a timber bridge replacement. For a while, DOT, there was a policy that we could not replace timber bridges, or we could replace the bridges, but they had to be replaced with concrete bridges. Now we're actually replacing some timber bridges with timber bridges. Of course, there has to be a geotech analysis to make sure that that's okay, that the timber can support the bridge. But that one is an example of that. And it'd be on lower volume roads, obviously, which is where you typically find those timber bridges. There's a pavement rehab project, I-5925, that's been moved out a couple of years. And then I also added, see the ones that start with SS dash something, just put those in. Those are spot safety projects addressing specific safety needs, just so that you're aware that those will be ongoing. Yeah, and that's it. Everything else is what you've been seeing for a while. And if you have any questions of those, either let me know now or certainly get in touch with me later. And as a reminder, these are posted on the French Broad Rivers website.
Thank you, Steve. Is there any questions for Steve? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sean.
We got one.
Yeah, I do want to give a quick thanks to our divisions. We've been holding some meetings with our divisions regarding the upcoming resurfacing projects. Some of those, I think we've found opportunities for some potential enhancements for safety. I think there's an intersection that the Division 14 is looking at for adding all-way stop signs that has shown up on safety reports, and other opportunities to enhance safety and mobility. So a big thanks to our divisions for making time to look into some of those requests.
Perfect. Thank you. Next is Daniel.
All right. I have 2 updates, plus a tangent I'll be going over. First, North Carolina just finished its first advanced mobility plan and posted it online for anybody to see. It is creatively named the Advanced Mobility Plan NC. And it is a joint effort between the Aviation, Integrated Mobility, and Rail divisions to create a multimodal transportation system and really invest in new technologies, including multimodal services, connected and autonomous vehicles, advanced air mobility, connected streets, and freight transfer hubs. You're probably familiar from previous updates of some of the pilot projects that were used to build out this plan, such as in 2018, we teamed up with Volvo to do a truck platooning study, trying to get truckless together to improve fuel efficiency. 2020, we tested a vertical takeoff and landing taxi service out in the Outer Banks. That was with an electric airplane. And we also did the CASI program. There were several updates on that. This was a low-speed people mover. We tested it on college campuses and in parks, just to move people around. So I expect more updates like that, just new technology to be spurred on by this plan. Second update is A10A traffic forecast. It's that time of the decade that we have to update that plan. Every 5 years, forecasts get rolled over, turned over and updated. The old forecast is 5 years old. We're going to do that again. Questionnaires have been mailed out to staff, so city and county staff. And, just want to encourage everybody to make sure your staff responds to that survey. It's 10 questions, pretty basic stuff, but it helps us put out a better product, make sure we don't miss anything. It's simple questions about have there been any recently permitted developments? Is there any particular, seasonal issues we need to be aware of? We're about to do data collection. Are there any bad times to do data collection coming up? Do you have any summer festivals or fairs that may throw off the numbers? It's just kind of a basic hierarchy. But I was looking through the list, and it looks like it went to Buncombe County, Woodfin, and Weaverville. I'm going to forward it up to Madison County, because the project goes all the way to Mars Hill, as it currently shows on the map. The cost estimate for that project is a whole other issue. First, addendum. That's it for my actual updates. Alexis Ferris is listed to go after me, but she is not here. She has left NCDOT and gone to the city of Chapel Hill. So we'll find a replacement soon. But I did call her yesterday on my drive up here just to chit-chat and get all types of interesting transit information that I need to make sure I hold on to. And after me is FHWA. So this is my tangent. When I was driving here this morning, caught like 10 minutes of a little radio show called the 1A. They were interviewing mayors about local infrastructure. So it was kind of interesting. And I'll have to go listen to the whole program. But a mayor mentioned 2 grants. One, Safe Streets for All grants, which is on your handout. And the other was Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods grant. And he didn't specify which one, but he said that it's a discretionary grant, non-competitive, and underdrawn. So there's money available. And I didn't know if our FHWA partners knew which of those grants that is. The Reconnecting Neighborhoods grant does like a NOFO once a year. Last year it was in July. So since we don't have a July meeting, I don't know how much headway we'll have when that announcement comes out, but I wanted to go ahead and seed that now in case there's an email, not to overlook it. But over the last 20 minutes, after our funding conversation, sorry, this is now the tangent. I'm thinking about the comment that, we should put in our priorities in case the legislators come up with money. But based on something David Wasserman said last week at the TCC meeting, the SPOT office does look at, the SIP office does look at trying to apply for grants for some of our projects, build grants, tiger grants, et cetera. And that frees up money for our discretionary program. So even if we don't get a grant, say for our 5 priorities, if we get another grant for another project in the region, that money gets reallocated. So pursuing these grants.
Right. not to make a tangent on your tangent, or follow up on your tangent, but, I mean, just to know that that's something that's been talked about quite a bit. My understanding is, as of right now, NCDOT's policy on going after discretionary grants is that it has to be for projects already funded in the tip and stick. So they can't just go after projects that they don't have match funds already allocated. The other thing is that a lot of these federal discretionary grants have pretty strict timelines in terms of completion. So, I mean, I will say we've talked to DOT about a few projects that are in the STIP that we thought would be very competitive for federal discretionary grants. They agreed that they'd be very competitive, but one of the big problems is those projects, their construction schedule is so far out that they wouldn't be able to meet the federal timeline. So I will just note that this is something that has been brought up and discussed, at least in the prioritization work group, is how can we make sure that we're getting projects that have a chance of going after federal discretionary grants. Because some of our projects line up pretty well, some of them don't. Not to say they're bad projects, but just to say that they are not the type of projects we can go after, especially things like reconnecting communities. The other thing I note is with some of these NOFOs coming out, with some of these programs, we've worked with some of our local governments on making sure that we have a project kind of in the hopper with reconnecting communities. I'll note we've been working with the city of Hendersonville on their Above the Mud project. We helped them submit an application for a planning grant a few years ago. I'm biased, but it's very well done. Exceptional. I believe the feedback we got was it was that close to getting funded. But if there are other projects and things like that that folks want to discuss and talk about, if there's an opportunity to go after some of these federal grants, we're always more than happy to chat.
And I talk about it every month. We hear the millions or maybe the tens of grants that I announce at each meeting. So there's definitely we're not in short supply of these discretionary grants, but, you know, it's, like Tristan said, it's all about one, if you have that match and if your project is ready. I'm working with several, let's say, RAISE projects that, let's say, they barely made the deadline to get to construction. You know, we had 3 days, you know, and others who weren't going to make it, but somehow magically it never happened, but Congress decided to extend the deadline. That's something that's only happened twice ever with RAISE build. So it's all about if you are ready and if you have the money. See, now my turn.
That's a good segue.
Yeah.
That's a great segue.
Speaking of grants, I have some more to share. The first one I have is the charging and fueling infrastructure grant. So this one is for having charging stations or alternative fuel stations along the AFC corridors or for wherever you want it to be. The one thing that I've learned from our last round is that there are certain general statutes in North Carolina that could prevent you from doing certain charging stations. So there are two types of grants. It's called the community and the corridor. And with the corridor grant, if you are using a private entity, you can use them to do the match. So they can do the 20% match. But you can't do that in North Carolina. North Carolina does not allow municipalities to use alternative contracting. And that is what these charging stations are, especially if you try to get another private entity like a Sheets or something to put in the match. So you would have to put in the match yourself. So that's something we learned this year with one of our grants. So anyway, if you're interested, The application is due on August 28th. So looking at it, it still doesn't mean that you can't, do it. There are good opportunities, especially we had one recently for Kings Mountain. They did a community one, and they're doing it on their property, like whatever municipal buildings that they have, they'll put charging stations there. So it doesn't have to be too hard. And the NEVI group for NCDOT is supporting the 2 municipalities that we have who got the awards for the last round. So you will have support if you do decide to apply. And then the next one is the Smart Grants Program. This one is to conduct demonstration grants or demonstration projects focused on advanced smart community technology and systems in order to improve transportation efficiency and safety. So you kind of have projects like smart grids or innovative aviation, like, what do you call them? Drones. That's really how they sound. Drones, or even like e-cargo bike deliveries. So using them to deliver in your urban areas versus having all the trucks in the way and all the parking spots. So those are innovative types of grants that you can do. And the application for that is July 12th. And then we have one for transit. It's to provide funding to local communities to integrate land use and transportation planning with a new fixed guideway or core capacity transit capital investment. So that's transit-oriented development planning grant. That one is, the deadline is July 22nd. And then, let's see, and then I'll skip SS4A because you all have that grant. But if for some reason a municipality itself wants their own, they are certainly able to apply. There are multiple deadlines for that. And then we have next. So this is just a list of the upcoming deadlines for certain grants. So just be on the lookout for those. And we have a final rule for NEPA for regulation. So if you do want to comment on that final rule, then actually you can, it's over. So the effective date of this rule will be July 1st. But our next one is the Uniform Act. So the Uniform Act is about relocation, acquisitions, and making sure you're doing it in a way that complies with federal law. And so they just updated it. It's been 20 years since they've updated it. And this update is specifically about the relocation program, the relocation part of it. So it is, let's see, the effective date of this regulation is June 3rd of this year. And then if you're interested in some cash, there is $750,000 available for the Modernizing NEPA Challenge. So if that's something you qualify for, check it out. You have until July 15th to submit. And then I have just publication resources and webinars for you to read and listen to. And that's it.
Thank you so much for putting it all together. I like that section each month because it's very easy to get to and get around.
Did you click on it? Yeah, because there's so many. I'm like,
it's so much, and it's so good because you can find exactly what you need to, part of the challenge is finding what you need to read, and you summarize it very well. So
thank you.
Next is subcommittee work group reports.
Sure. We won't go through all of them. To note, the prioritization subcommittee, we're moving the meeting date to July 10th. I don't think too many people will be here July 3rd. But what they discussed was the kickoff of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, as well as the P7 local input points. In July, we'll be kicking off our 2050 socioeconomic projection study. I need to find a cooler name for that. But that looks at how much growth we should be expecting in our region, where that growth is likely to go or where we want to plan for it to go, and what the transportation impacts from that growth is expected to be. So that is on the docket for July, as well as a follow-up to start our public input on our metropolitan transportation plan. So look for more notices on that over the summer. Yeah, again, I won't be going through all of these. To note, we have some other informal work groups. We've started an informal, locally administered project work group with some of the local government managers of our locally administered projects. So discussing some of the issues that they're facing, some of the hiccups in their projects. All in all, that's something that I think has hopefully been helpful in connecting people who are facing challenges in project development. But I'll go ahead and just note our spreadsheet on the special studies that the MPO is funding and or managing. So we have a number of studies underway. I think we can almost cross a few of these off the list.
2 of them can almost go.
All right. Thank God. So our Reed Creek Greenway feasibility study, I believe we're closing that out today. So that is one Greenway study we are hoping to close. Again, socioeconomic projections is underway, CCP-MTEP update underway, Cities for All Regional Action Plan. Thanks to everyone who was able to attend the Leadership Summit earlier this month, or who sent representatives from your fire departments, the sheriff's offices. It was a really great event. We had more than 40 people show up and discuss the plan to improve safety. Pat Avenue Corridor study is underway. Ridgecrest Connector, we did close out, so we can cross that off for the future. And then Woodfin Weaverville, we plan to get that Greenway study underway. We are still working on contracting with the consultant, and the Buncombe County pedestrian plan, we have some RFLOI drafted, so that should be hitting the streets relatively soon.
You skipped Cane Creek?
Cane Creek Greenway study, that is a study in Fletcher that would connect their existing greenway along Cane Creek over to the French Broad River. In coordination with the town, they've asked that we put that on the back burner for now. So we'll leave that on the list, but maybe coming back up soon. Locally administered projects, I won't go through all of these, but just to note, this is from the MPO's discretionary funds and all the various projects that are being funded through that pot. That is controlled by this board. And so, as Steve noted earlier, the US 19 bike path improvements, or the pedestrian safety improvements through Maggie Valley is now completed. And so if you haven't, go check that out. It's, to me, it's a great enhancement for pedestrian safety along US 19 in Maggie Valley. New Lester Highway sidewalks, they're right out here. So feel free to go check those out. I think we've already noticed a number of people that are utilizing those sidewalks. The safety issues on New Lester Highway, especially pedestrian safety issues, have been pretty noteworthy over the last decade plus. So very happy to see that project nearing completion, I believe. Just one other that I'll highlight is the Haywood Road resurfacing and bicycle and pedestrian improvements. That's a project being managed by DOT. We've asked them to come present to this group because to me, it's a really great example of DOT having a resurfacing project. The community came to us and said, we have all of these things that we'd like to have done. That doesn't fit in a resurfacing budget. So we worked with DOT and the community, used the resurfacing funds as match, used the MPO funds for those improvements that aren't typical resurfacing, get some more stuff done. And that's a project that's moving relatively quickly. If Tim Anderson's on the line, he keeps saying that, it's being delayed another month or two. That is, compared to a lot of projects, a month or two delay, I'm A-okay with. That project is moving at a pretty quick clip. So we have that list of projects available for you all to look through. We'll be updating that with the most recently quarterly updates we got from project managers, so you can see how projects are progressing. And that is all I've got. Legislative updates, I think everyone's waiting on a budget. Also to note, one thing that did go through is Joey Hopkins is now officially the secretary at NCDOT. That went through earlier this month. But he's been acting there for a long time. So I totally forgot they didn't officially. Yes, please, sorry.
We officially have a date for the Hellbender Regional Greenway Forum for this year. It's going to be Thursday, September 26th. It's going to be at the Mary C. Jenkins Community Center in Brevard. Brevard has stepped up to host this year. More information will come out soon about speakers and times, but I've got a save the date that I will be sending out to you all after this meeting. Feel free to distribute to anyone and everyone. And there'll be like an Eventbrite and a website RSVP.
Any other announcements? News, special updates? Topics for next. We will not be meeting in July, so.
No meeting in July. We gave up on getting quorum in July years ago. In August, we'll be bringing back the final local input point assignment for regional impact projects. We'll also be talking about the A10AA project, the future I-26 widening, I had a set of project information presentations, but we may be, I've gotten requests for more, so we'll look at which ones we can fit onto August's agenda. And I guess to note, a couple things we'll send out is NCDOT published a report on the Merriman Avenue Road Diet that shows the impacts to safety as well as congestion from the road diet. So we'll send that out to you all as a follow-up. And DOT has issued their own SIF prioritization survey. That came out yesterday, so we'll send you all the link to that survey as well.
And do we have any public comments? Hearing none, we can adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, folks.